This is a quick overview of the zero-touch provisioner application written by Pure Storage. This application is used to configure a FlashArray or FlashBlade once it's been physically hooked up. And a customer can run this in their site and a dark site just to make it much easier to get the arrays online and ready for additional configuration. So let's jump in. Enable to get the zero-touch provisioner, you're going to want to go to code.purestorage.com and you will see many of our offerings here. You'll want to look for the tile that says zero-touch provisioner. It's going to look like this. Once you click that, you're going to get to the Git repository that houses this. So if you look at this, it's going to have some instructions, this video, likely where you found this. So to get started, you want to go to the compiled folder here, and then you'll download the binary for whatever platform you want to run this on. So if you're running a Mac, you can run the Darwin version. If you're running Linux with a GUI, you can run this one, or Windows. So you go ahead and download that. Once you get it downloaded, you're going to just simply double click it. Now, a warning, at the time of this recording, we have not code signed the executable. So you probably will get a warning when you try to open this saying that it's unsigned. So use at your discretion, but once you decide to open it, it's going to look something like this. All right, so we can go full screen on it. There's two tabs. One tab is for FlashArray, one tab is for FlashBlade. So I'm going to go through FlashArray first. You'll notice there's three columns here. The left column and the middle column are basically your inputs for the configuration. All of the top here are required. Below this field here, or this section here, this is all optional. So your DNS domains, DNS servers, relays, etc. And then the middle column is the IP addresses for your virtual IP as well as the two controller admin interfaces. So to get started, you'll need the IP address of the array that is the DHCP IP obtained once it booted up. So we'll go ahead and put in an IP here. You'll notice that as I go through this, I'm actually using a simulator, not an actual array for this. So it's going to be a little different, but I'm just going to put in a dummy IP here, and it's going to actually hit my simulator. But when you query the array, it's going to give you some JSON results. This piece here is stating that it's currently uninitialized, and then you'll see some information on these. Likely this won't be set. You'll see nothing or null values in all this, and that's what we're trying to accomplish now. So to get started, if I try to initialize, it's going to tell me I have to put in some form fields. So here's the requirements for the array name. Basically can't be more than 55 characters, and it can't contain a dash in the front or the end. So I'll go ahead and put array-01. If I hit initialize again, it's gonna proceed through the form validation. Now all of the required fields have form validation, and you'll notice that if you try to initialize without providing the field or the proper format of the field. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed through here. You'll put your organization, your name, your title. Now our enterprise user license agreement is located here on this tiny URL. You can open it if you'd like. You have to say yes to that. Then you provide your NTP server, so ntp1.me.com. Now, if I have more than one, I can do comma separation with no spaces. So something like this, to.me.com. For time zones, by default, we put Los Angeles time in here. You can go ahead and drop this down and select your appropriate time zone. Now, something to note, there's no scroll bar on the time zones. This is just a limitation of the UI, which is using the operating system level UI. So you can just use your arrow keys or your page up and page down to navigate through these. So I'll go ahead and select Denver for this example and then click. Okay, DNS domain. Name servers. Again, if you want multiples, you can do comma separated. I'll do one for now. Relay host, smtp.me.com. sender domain, me.com, and then the alert addresses. So if you want to provide alerts from the system to a specific email address, you would provide that here. All right, now if I try to initialize, it's going to tell me I haven't provided my IP addresses. So now I'm going to start with the virtual NIC. So I'm going to give it an IP, then a subnet mask, and then a gateway. All right. If I hit the autofill button, it's actually going to copy these entries down, so less typing for you. Now, notice I have the same IP address in each of the fields because I did an autofill. If I try to initialize like this, it's going to tell me you need unique IPs, obviously, right? So that is another element of protection for you. So we'll just go ahead and add these IPs in here. Once we have everything ready, we can just simply hit the initialize button. This is actually about that fast on a production array. It'll apply the configs through a REST API call, and then the FlashArray goes through an initialization process. And that process typically takes around 30 minutes to fully complete. So what you can do is, now that you've done this in the zero-touch provisioner, you can just take the URL here, which will be your management endpoint to get in. You can copy that, and then you can just close the application. And when the array, after 20, 30 minutes, you can test hitting this, and it should open the default portal URL for you, and you would type in the default credentials. All right, now that we've covered FlashArray, let's look at FlashBlade. So I'll go ahead and open this again. I'll come into the FlashBlade tab. Now this one's laid out a little differently because it's a different process to initialize. So the first thing I have to do is I have to click the login page here. Now you'll see again we have the 3 columns. Now this time the left column is the form controls and the steps you're going to have to take to fully finalize and complete the zero-touch provisioning. The middle column is the actual input and entry fields for each REST call that we'll make. And then the right column, the third column, is your output. Now something to note that's a little different in this one as well is there is an XAuth token. This will be populated when you create your session, okay? And then a progress bar. So this progress bar isn't for each call, it's for the overall process of the provisioning. So as you move through each of these processes, when you complete one step, the next step will become active, and you'll go through this and you'll see the progress bar slowly filling up. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a session. Now the session requires you to form the URL to the FlashBlade correctly, okay? And that URL is typically HTTP, HTTPS, the IP address that you receive from a DHC boot up for that FlashBlade. And then it's going to follow by /API/the version. Now to make this easy to build this URL, you can just simply put the IP of the FlashBlade here, click generate URL. It will enumerate the versions and grab the latest version from that FlashArray and then pre-build this URL for you. So you would put the IP here, generate, and then you'll just simply click create session. So once we create a session, what you'll notice is now I've received an XAuth token up here. So if you don't have the XAuth token, you did not successfully establish a session. If you did, you're going to see it here, and this progress is going to start off by saying you've completed this step. Okay. Now you can proceed to the array form. So next we'll go into the array form. Same naming convention applies to the FlashArray. So I'll go ahead and call this array-02, and then I'll have to provide an NTP server, time1.me.com, or I can just put an IP in here. You can also put multiples if you'd like, again, comma separated. And then same thing applies for the time zone. So use your arrow keys on your keyboard to select the right time zone, and then click apply. Now these steps take a little bit longer on a production FlashBlade. So what you'll notice is when you click apply, things may just kind of look like they're hung up, but they're not. It's actually processing that REST call and waiting for the response back. So be patient and let this process finish. If it fails, it's going to tell you here. Okay. If it succeeds, it's going to tell you here. So this is always your output. So now that we've successfully applied the array name and done the initial array configuration, it's telling us we can proceed to the DNS form. All right, DNS form, we're going to put our domain name in and then DNS servers. So ns1.me.com, comma, ns2.me.com. Go ahead and apply. And again, if it's successful, it's going to tell you, and it's going to then give you the results back from the response of the FlashBlade. So here you can see our domain was set as well as our name servers, and it's telling us to go ahead and proceed. If for whatever reason this fails, it would actually not progress forward, and it would give you the failure message here that you can share with support. At any point in time, before or after applying a step, you can query the array to see the current configuration. So all this will do is do an actual get call to the array and then show you. Now you're going to notice this is not what I set just now because I'm using a simulator. If this was a production array, you would actually see what you just set in these fields. All right, moving on to the subnet form. By default, we name the most common naming for the subnet management subnet is management. So we pre-populate that and VLAN 0. If you need to change these for any reason, you can here, but we pre-populate just for convenience. So I'm going to go ahead and give it my gateway IP, something like that. And then as far as a subnet prefix, so we do use the prefix format, not a subnet mask, so you're going to have to put in something like this. 1.1.0 /24. If I try to just do an IP address here, let's see if create new. Oh, it's wanting me to do out of band first. So out of band is required to select this. You can select if it's out of band or in band for your management subnet. So I'll just say true to that. If I try to create this, it's going to say that's an invalid prefix. Okay. So what I need to do is add this 24, create. This was a success, gives me my information here. I can proceed to the NIC form. Now the NIC form is the tricky one. So although a simple form, this one actually takes about 30 seconds to a minute to fully apply. And during that time, it appears as if the zero-touch provisioner is hung up and not responding. But I assure you it is not hung up and not responding. It's simply waiting for the response of the FlashBlade to come back. So I'll show you what we did here that's a little different. I'm going to go ahead and put the IPs that I want for the admin VRO IP endpoint as well as the two fabric module admin endpoints. So 10.1.1.100, 10.1.1.101, 10.1.1.1. I'll do 100 here just to demonstrate. I have two of the same IPs. The application is going to be smart enough to tell you that you have duplicates here. Okay, so you'll go in and you're actually going to change this so that it's a unique IP. And you probably noticed that pop-up. So that's what's different here is once I hit apply, we're showing you this pop-up just to make it aware to you that this step is going to take up to a minute to complete. So be patient, don't close the window, don't do anything, just let it complete. So I say okay here. This was fast because it's a simulator, but in a production environment when you're deploying one of these, it'll just sit for a minute and it will eventually provide the response. If there's any errors in applying this, they're going to show up here. If it was successful in applying all of these, then you're going to see the successes and it's going to tell you to go ahead and proceed and open up the next form. All right, so we'll go into the SMTP form, sender domain, me.com, and then if you have a relay host, you can put it here. If you don't, then you'll use the internal mail SMTP server that's built into the FlashBlade. So I'll go ahead and create new here. Again, showing success. Next to the support form. Now this is where If you want to enable connectivity to our Pure One Meta system, our cloud-hosted analytics and reporting and management system, you would want to enable the phone home. So if I'm enabling phone home, I want to say true here. If I say false, then it will disable the phone home. This would be useful in a dark site or facilities in which you don't have approval to send that telemetry data up. So I'll say true. If I have an explicit outbound proxy, I can provide that here. If I use transparent or direct connection to the internet, I don't have to provide that. Go ahead and hit apply. Okay, so that was successful. Now we have our last step, step 8. Go into alerts, provide the email address that should get the alerts generated from the FlashBlade. And this enabled field is irrelevant for creating a new alert. So if I go ahead and just create new, it's going to go ahead and create that. If I want to edit that, let's say that I didn't, for whatever reason, I want to disable that. I can just change this to false, and then I can update it. And now you're going to see it's changed to false. If I wanted to delete it, I could just simply hit delete, and it's going to delete that alert watcher. Okay. So now, once we're done here, go ahead and create that again. You'll see the finalize form option popped up. Okay. Now, before we go to that point, I just want to talk a little bit about what the advanced options are. At any point in time, after you've established a session, you can come into this advanced options. What these are for is really when you have a unique configuration in the network. So what this advanced section does is it helps you to manage the lag for your initial configuration. By default, when it's booted up, there's a single lag created with all of your ports in that lag, and it's called uplink. And you can query here and see. It's called uplink. All the ports are added to that lag. This is the most standard configuration because what we ideally want you to do is create a single lag on the fabric modules, and then you'll create a single lag on the 2 switches that you have, and then using LACP you'll have a single port name used for all communication into this FlashBlade. If for some reason you do not want to have that configuration, let's say you didn't have a lag on the upstream switches, or you have 2 separate environments that you have to create 2 different lags for access into this, then you could come in and you could actually delete the lag. And when you click this, it opens a subform. So I could give it the form name, or the lag name, I'm sorry, uplink. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Okay, so now just say that it was deleted, and then I can come in and create a new lag. And from this point, I can give it a name, net1 lag, and then I would want to provide all the port names that I want to include in this lag. So ch1.fm1.eth0 and comma separated, no spaces, fm2.eth0 and on, right? I could put them all here and I create the new lag, and you're going to see that it's going to create that custom lag. Okay. All right, and at any point you can query the lag just to see what it looks like as well. So moving on to the finalize. Once we get to this point, you can see our progress bar is 100%. That means we've applied all the necessary configurations to finalize the initialization. The first thing you're going to want to do is validate. So we come in here, we click the validate button. You should see a true on all 4 of these configurations. It's telling us we've named it, DNS is right, SMTP is right, and our network configuration is right. So we can go ahead and do the finalization. To finalize, we want to select true just to confirm that we are ready, and we hit the finalize setup. Once we do this, it's going to provide the URL that you would use to get into the FlashBlade web portal. So you want to copy that. And then you notice it's completely grayed out the rest of the form. So this again, to fully initialize a FlashBlade, or depending if you have multi-chassis with several FlashBlades, this could take longer than 30 minutes to an hour, but generally speaking, it's about 30 minutes to fully initialize, do all the power cycling required, and then once it's ready, you'll be able to hit that web interface through this URL. Now, if you run into any problems with this, please reach out to your SE or your account team, as well as your support through Pure. And we're happy that you chose Pure Storage, and hopefully this works well for you. Thank you.